Well, hello. This is the Truth Rover. If you're watching this video, you're probably as confused as I am about the Bible. And this video is not really gonna help you out either. You're probably looking for answers to the questions you have about the Bible. Unfortunately, I don't have the answers. Only more questions. In the book of Genesis, beginning in chapter 18, we have a story, the main character of which is Abraham. And what happens in this story is Abraham's sitting in front of his tent, and he looks up from where he's sitting and he sees three men off in the distance. He gets up, runs to meet them, and convinces them to come back to his tent and have a meal and have their feet washed and to relax afterward. These aren't ordinary men. Two of them are angels. One is God himself. So anyway, after they have their meal, and I guess their feet are all nice and clean, God proceeds to promise Abraham a son. He tells him that basically within 1 year he's going to have a son. Abraham kind of questions this because he's over 100 years old. And Sarah, who's back in the tent, she kind of laughs to herself about it because she's 80-something, well beyond her childbearing years, if ever she had any. You know the story, she was barren. So, anyway, God promises Abraham a son, after which the two angels get on their way down the road. They take off walking. And God proceeds to explain to Abraham where they're going and why they're going there. Now, you know the story, I'm sure. If you don't, please read it. But they're on their way to Sodom to inspect the city, because God says if the things he's heard about this city are true, he's going to have to destroy it. Funny how human God seemed to be back in the day. Anyway, Abraham gets upset when he hears this. And he says, it would be unthinkable that you would destroy a city like that. There's probably some righteous people there. What if there's 50 righteous people there? How could you destroy the righteous along with the wicked? And so God agrees not to destroy the city at all if there's 50 righteous people. But that's apparently not good enough for Abraham. And he quibbles with God until he finally arrives at the number 10. And God agrees, again, not to destroy the city, an entire city of wicked people, on account of 10 righteous people. Seems a bit inconsistent with the way God does things, especially if you're familiar with what's supposed to happen at Armageddon. But there it is in black and white. So, after that, and one other thing, I try to put myself in Abraham's sandals and think, well, if I was concerned about the righteous people in the city, and I did indeed love righteousness and hate wickedness, then wouldn't I ask God to take the righteous out of the city? and then go ahead and destroy the rest of the people? And one other thing, no doubt Abraham knew that Lot had decided to go live there. So, in voicing his concern for things, why didn't he just say, "My nephew's there. Please warn him at least"? Or why didn't he drop the number from 10 to 4? Lot's wife, Lot's 2 daughters. That's 4. I don't know. The Bible doesn't tell us. Anyway, so that's the end of that conversation, basically, and God goes back up to heaven. And you know the rest of the story concerning Sodom. And if you'd like to know what I think about Lot, well, I have a video about it. And I also have a video about Sodom. It's a long one. Kind of boring. So anyways, if we move forward a few chapters in the book of Genesis, we find another interaction between God and Abraham. This time it's not a face-to-face conversation. Rather, it seems to be telepathic or something. But God calls out to Abraham. Abraham answers, "Here I am." And God says he wants Abraham to sacrifice his son, to offer his son as a burnt offering upon a mountain, Mount Moriah. Mind you, this is the same son that God had promised Abraham in his previous visit. And there's no argument that takes place afterward, and that's what I find strange. Abraham already knew that he could argue with God. He argued with him in the past and wasn't punished for it, but actually was allowed to believe that he swayed God's thinking on matters. So why didn't he argue this time? I don't know. It's always troubled me, and back when I used to go to the Kingdom Hall, and back when I was studying, way back, before I became a Jehovah's Witness, I asked these questions. The answers I would be given were something like this. Well, everything that happened isn't recorded in the Bible. Probably Abraham did argue with God, or ask him why at least, but it just wasn't recorded. Okay. I guess I left the argument at that. Another one I would often hear was, well, Abraham probably reckoned that God could resurrect Isaac afterward. And again, I would leave the argument at that. But when you think about it, doesn't that kind of seem to make God a little bit incompetent? I mean, why would he ask you to do something and then undo what you did? But either way, there's no argument recorded, but Abraham saddles his ass the next day. He gets his attendants and Isaac, and they head for Mount Moriah. You know, 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16 and 17 is a scripture that always pops into my mind when I'm reading things like this in the Bible, because it says that all scripture is inspired of God and beneficial for teaching, for reproving, for setting things straight. So what are we to conclude from the fact that the details concerning a bunch of sinners in Sodom were recorded, even going so far as to record the increments by which Abraham decreased the amount of necessary souls required to save the city. And then the details regarding a much graver situation. Well, not graver. Is that a word? more grave. They're equally grave situations, but Abraham argued in the first case, and in the second case did not, or else the details were withheld for some reason. I would gladly trade the details given concerning the conversation that took place between Abraham and God regarding Sodom. I would gladly trade those details for the details regarding the conversation that took place between Abraham and God regarding Isaac when he asked him to slit his son's throat and light him on fire. Wouldn't you?